Welcome again, dear Ifrikya FM audience, and guess what? I have another guest with me. Yes, it's another exclusive interview. So I have the pleasure to have Mr. Mohamed Yahiaoui. He's an expert in African tourism, and he's going to tell us more. But first, without further delay, let's ask him, how would you define yourself, Mr. Yahiaoui? Tell us, who is Mr. Yahiaoui first?
To define it is just one way to do it in a simple way. Yeah. By my name, I am Mohamed Yahiaoui. I am a tourist advisor. I am what we call a voyagiste, the one who organizes trips for people who would like to visit the world. And in this particular case, I am what they call an Africaniste. I do Africa, I visit Africa. This is my field of investigation. I'm also a filmmaker, and I'm interested in cultural heritage, especially the cultural heritage regarding Africa.
Oh, that's very interesting. But what got you into tourism specifically?
Tourism goes with culture, with cultural heritage. It's just another aspect. And tourism comes from the word tour, and I like touring. I like traveling because this is where we get most of our experience. This is how we build up our personality, and this is how we become gradually to love other people from different cultures. So that's what I am in tourism.
That's very interesting, and I've heard that you visited a lot of African nations. Among them, of course, we're not going to forget the East of Africa. So what do you say about the East Africa?
East Africa is a fascinating area. It's a subcontinent. It's located in the southern part of Africa, and that is a conglomerate of various countries, including Tanzania, Uganda, Mozambique, Kenya, among other things. Now there is Congo, Rwanda, Madagascar, and South Sudan as well. I am interested in this part of the world because this is deep Africa, the deep Africa that I am very much interested in. It doesn't mean that I ignore the rest of Africa, like the sub-Saharan countries, but to me, that's the region that I am interested in. And as I am an Anglicist, you know, I have been educated in England, and English is almost my mother tongue, and naturally I just go into those ex-British colonies, English-speaking countries.
Okay, so you're there to find out the African depth in those ex-British colonies. But let's talk about Uganda, since this is the theme today. It's Uganda. So you have visited Uganda several times before, I'm pretty sure, but you also went with travel agencies in the experience. It's an initiative by the Ugandan embassy here in Algeria. How would you describe your overall tourism experience in Uganda?
I've been to Uganda many times, before COVID and after COVID, and I found this place very fascinating. Until I visited Uganda, I went to Tanzania and Kenya, and these are open places that are open to the oceans, and but Uganda is what you call a landlocked country. So initially, when you talk about landlocked places like Ethiopia, which I visited many times, you would think that, you know, there's not much interest there because there is no mixture of other civilizations that came from the sea to amalgamate. But contrary to appearances, Uganda, because precisely it's a landlocked country, it has a lot of traditions, a lot of history, and so far it has not been corrupt, in quotes, by the Western civilization. And so in Uganda, the country is split into small kingdoms. And because of that configuration, the place is it has a lot of traditions, and it has not so far been sort of modernized. So that makes the place so interesting. As I am interested in cultural heritage, it's really my field there, and I feel like I am in heaven, because wherever you look, its traditions, its history, its usage, and it tells us a lot about the people, about how they run their lives. And also, most importantly, it is through cultural heritage, it's through history, that we can demonstrate that Africa used to be, was, a place of great civilizations that have been subsequently destroyed by the slave market and all the other Western influences. And also I have a duty to demonstrate that those cliches which say that Africa hasn't got a history and has been civilized since the white came in is a totally wrong picture. And my work is to show that Africa has got its history, and it's got its empires, like the Monomotapa Empire in Zimbabwe, like a lot of other rests and archaeological places which indicate that there was very, very sophisticated methods of agriculture and all the rest.
Of course, but let's go back a little bit to Uganda and again to your experience there. Could you describe what are the specific destinations or attractions in Uganda that stood out most to you, but also tell us why did they stood out?
Well, you see, each country has got its specific appearances, its specific specificity, and what makes Uganda interesting is some of its aspects related to wildlife. They've got the gorillas, for example, which live in the wilderness, and the people there, they had the genius to habituate those gorillas so that they are not afraid of human presence, which makes it interesting for us to get closer to these animals and to observe them, to watch them, which is a very unique experience. I cannot explain it in words. There's a lot of emotion when you get close to a gorilla in his wild environment.
Yes.
And he's just, chewing his leaves, sitting there and whatever, and doing no harm at all.
Yes, but as someone familiar with tourism and, you've went to many African nations, but how does Uganda compare to other African nations?
As I said, Uganda is, I think it stands out as a new destination for all of the visitors of the world. Why? Because it's not a sort of industrial tourism that you can see in other places like Indonesia, Malaysia, Tunisia, Turkey, Egypt or something. These places are, the tourism in Uganda is à la carte, So it's just a little, you see these visitors just in little groups. And when you do your safari, there's not much congestion as opposed to other places in the neighboring countries.
Okay, let's cut it down a little bit short here and let's not go far into the details. Let's just go straight into it and ask you, what opportunities do you see for tourism exchange between North and East Africa, particularly between Algeria and Uganda?
As you know, our tourism in Algeria is not very well developed so far, although there are a lot of efforts to develop it, especially the northern part, the sea part. However, the desert, the Saharan tourism is something which is very exceptional, which I think is very unique. So that's a very good, interesting, attractive field for Algeria. For Uganda, it's a totally different thing. Uganda is located under the equator, and it's a tropical country.
Yes.
A lot of water, a lot of rivers full of water, and because you have a lot of water, so it's a lot of greenness and a lot of fauna, a lot of animals,
Certainly.
a lot of wildlife. So the exchange could be complementary, but that is another story because we have to work very hard to promote this reciprocal relationship. And it is possible because we have good political will between the two countries.
That's a very good point to mention. But there is something that came to my notice, and that is the book you've been holding for the entire interview. So can you tell us a little bit more about it?
This is one of the most interesting encounters I made when I was last time during this farm tour in Uganda. I met the first Ugandan veterinarian woman specialized in wildlife, and her specialty is the gorillas. So, yes, very impressive. So this is one of my things. When I travel around in these places, I always sniff around for those local people who have been sort of educated and they have done something for their country. Gladys, who is there, who's the writer of this book, has done a lot for her country, and it's been very, very challenging work for her because she was working with animals in the wilderness. She could have stayed as a veterinary looking after pets and domestic animals, but she refused it. She wanted to do something for her country, and she wanted to do something for the wildlife, for the wild animals in her country. And I have due respect for her. And when I met her, I said, we have an ambitious we have a project together. I'm going to make a documentary about her.
That's very interesting. Shout out to Gladys, who decided to challenge all the obstacles. Shout out to you, girl. And before we conclude this interview, any last word you'd like to say?
I would like all of our Algerian people to look southwards now, to look at Africa, to look at the countries that we have neglected so far. We must remember that Algeria has a good legacy in terms of historical links to the other African countries. Unfortunately, we have forgotten about it, or it's been dropped down. But fortunately enough, now it's been revived and it's been updated, if I may say, by our president, who is 100% Africanist, and that is a good positive point. And I hope that it will spin off to encourage a lot of our youth to visit those countries. It will be a good lesson to learn.
Thank you, Mr. Yahiaoui, and thank you, dear listeners, for tuning in, and of course to the audience following us through social media. Thank you for keeping up with this interview. A reminder, this was the expert in African tourism, Mr. Mohamed Yahiaoui, and this is Nouad tuning out. See you in other interviews.